G'day everybody, I'm doing a contradiction today that is extra. I'm going through 439 contradictions and I'm sure this is one of them. However, one of my subscribers has made a comment and they have said that where did Jesus heal the blind man? The book of Luke says that Jesus healed a blind man as Jesus was getting near Jericho, while the parallel account in Matthew mentions two blind men and says the incident occurred when Jesus was going out of Jericho. This sounds like a contradiction and I want to get into it and delve into it more. My name is Craig and this is Morning Star Quest, where we are journeying through the Bible one question at a time. So this is a bit of an extra one, and I'm sure of the 439 contradictions that I don't believe that there are contradictions, because I'm a Christian. I can't say for certain that there aren't any contradictions in the Bible. So I'm going to go through these 439. And obviously, this is one of them. So let's delve into it and see if we can actually get into more information. Is this a contradiction, or is this more like every time I do these contradictions, I find that they are more like a Bible study, and I'm loving it. And this is my friend Cosmo.
Hi, everyone. This sounds like a fascinating topic to dive into. Let's explore these accounts and see what insights we can uncover.
DP9769 has a great question here. Where did Jesus heal the man? And also, is there one blind man or two blind men? So this is, it is very curious. It's very, I love getting into these contradictions because I'm not afraid of contradictions, because every time I do, I investigate them and they're not, but there's so much more. So let's find out. So, all right, DP9769, let's just call him DP for now. Let's go to, no, it's not working for some. Oh, hang on. I know what I'm doing. There we go. Okay, so we have, I'm getting way ahead of myself here. So Matthew 20:29-34 states, as they were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. And behold, two blind men sitting on the road, or by the road, hearing that Jesus was passing by, cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." But the crowd sternly told him to be quiet. Yet they cried out even all the more, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." And Jesus stopped and called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, we want our eyes to be opened." Moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes, and immediately they regained their sight. They followed him. All right, so that is the setup. That is basically the story. But in each and every account, it does seem to be a little different. So in this one, we are leaving Jericho with two blind men. This one is leaving Jericho, but it just focuses on one person, Bartimaeus. And I won't do the whole thing because we know what's happening. But they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho, the other one said leaving, didn't it? Leaving, yep, okay, so we got leaving Jericho with his disciples and a large crowd, and a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the road. Okay, so this is getting interesting. Already we have a contradiction here. We have one person, and in another one we have two people. So leaving Jericho makes sense. They're both very much in line with that. But then they focus on one or two. But then there is even an interesting one here. Oops, I just get this one. Approaching Jericho, there's one blind man in Luke. Now, as Jesus was approaching Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the road begging. And the story is pretty much the same, but obviously it's one. So what do we got here, Cosmo? Because it seems like we've got some contradictions happening.
It's definitely intriguing. The differences in these accounts can seem contradictory at first glance. However, some scholars suggest that these variations may reflect different perspectives or emphases. For example, Matthew might focus on two blind men to highlight the completeness of Jesus' healing, while Mark and Luke may concentrate on Bartimaeus as a key figure. The approaching versus leaving Jericho might also reflect different stages of the same journey. What do you think about these possibilities?
All right, well, let's start with the blind men or the blind man. Like you said, we got Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Is that right? And from each one of those Gospels, and even including John, I don't think that John has this this story, but in each one of these Gospels, they are preaching or talking to a different audience. So in that sense, it is very important to know. Now, I think is it Matthew that is to the Jewish audience? What is the audience for the others?
Yes, Matthew is primarily addressed to a Jewish audience. Mark is often considered to be written for Roman readers, emphasizing action and immediacy. Luke's audience is primarily Gentile, highlighting universality and inclusiveness. John's Gospel, while not covering this story, focuses on a more theological perspective for a broad audience. Each Gospel's emphasis can shape how events are presented and which details are included.
And the interesting thing is here, we've got Matthew, who is, Matthew is to a Jewish audience. And back in Deuteronomy, there is something about when you have a witness, you need two. What's that? Is that 15:9 Deuteronomy? Have I got that right?
You're close.
Oh.
In Deuteronomy, it's Deuteronomy 19:15 that talks about needing 2 or 3 witnesses to establish a matter. So Matthew mentioning 2 blind men might align with this Jewish legal principle, emphasizing valid testimony. This could be a reason for the detail difference between accounts.
And when it comes to the others, they are not to the Jewish audience who have this, it must be 2, but they are more like Matthew is more Roman, so they want a more in-line story. They don't really need the second person, so it doesn't negate that there is a second person, but it's like, okay, we're just going to focus on this one person, Bartimaeus.
Exactly. Mark focuses on Bartimaeus, possibly because he was a more prominent or well-known figure. It doesn't mean there wasn't another blind man present. Each gospel writer chose details that resonated with their specific audience or narrative purpose. This approach helps to convey the core message effectively to different groups.
And I think if it was just this one story, we could probably write it off as, I don't know. But the thing is, with Matthew, as opposed to the others, it seems like he always puts in 2 witnesses, like 2 angels, 2 this, 2 that. Is that right?
Yes, that's a consistent pattern in Matthew. He often emphasizes pairs, aligning with the Jewish legal principle of 2 witnesses. This approach strengthens his gospel's connection to Jewish tradition and law.
And I guess with the others, it's not so important. However, I think Bartimaeus is to the readers of the time, I think Bartimaeus is a bit more well-known, or it seems like he should be well-known, which is why he's got his name and is standing out amongst the 2. They don't need the 2 because they're just talking about Bartimaeus.
Exactly. Bartimaeus might have been a recognizable figure, making his story impactful for Mark's readers. Highlighting him specifically could resonate more with them, while Matthew's audience might appreciate the emphasis on 2 witnesses. Each gospel writer tailored the story to best connect with their intended audience.
All right, so that makes the 1 blind man, the 2 blind man. Obviously, there was 2, but with the Roman audience and more the Gentile audience, they don't need this witness. He's still there. He still did the same things. And he still got up and followed Jesus. They just want to emphasize that one. Now, so that's done. That's pretty much, I think that's a pretty much done deal. However, approaching Jericho, leaving Jericho, this one seems like an oversight.
It might seem that way at first, but some scholars suggest there were 2 incidents, or that the event occurred in a region around Jericho, which had an old city and a new city. The blind man, or men, could have been encountered between these areas, making both approaching and leaving valid from different viewpoints. It's about perspective and the specific narrative focus of each gospel.
And I find it so interesting because I was doing some research with this yesterday. It's so interesting because there is the old Jericho, which in the Old Testament is where the walls of Jericho come down and is laid rubble. And in Jesus's day, that was still there, but there was a new Jericho, probably 1 mile from the old one, that was built by, I think it was Herod the Great, and it was more like a resort city. Like it had, it was more for a holiday house, but it was, it was a Roman garrison. It was a resort. It was if you were influential in any way, this was your city.
That's a great observation. The distinction between the old and new Jericho could explain the different descriptions. It's fascinating how historical and geographical details can shed light on these gospel accounts, offering plausible explanations for what might initially seem like contradictions. It really brings the context to life.
And another thing I find really interesting is if you were traveling from afar and you were going to Jerusalem, you would travel not just through Jericho, you would actually go with the old Jericho on your left and the new Jericho on your right, or the other way around, whichever way it was. But you went in between this. So there was like a crossroad. And the thing is, with the old Jericho, this was where the people that were the farmers, and they were people that weren't quite well off. They lived there. And if you were well off, you were living in this Roman garrison in the new Jericho. And I find it very fascinating that a blind person would not stay, like if he was living in the old Jericho where, the poorer people are, just staying in that township really wouldn't get you any, if you're begging on the streets, you're not going to get much money there. However, if you go to this crossroad, which is dead center between the two, the new and the old Jericho, this is where passerbyers would be traveling towards Jerusalem. And so this was the perfect place to beg. And if he got too close to the new Jericho, they would cast him out. If he goes too close to the old one, he's not going to get much money. So in the middle, with this crossroad where people are either stopping at Jericho or they are continuing through, this is the perfect place for a blind man to be, even.
That's a fascinating insight. The location between the two Jerichos would indeed be a strategic spot for a blind man to beg, capturing the attention of travelers from both directions. This aligns well with the idea that the Gospels highlight different aspects of the same event, depending on their audience and narrative focus. It adds another layer of historical and cultural context to the story.
And you know what I find interesting? Matthew is a Jewish audience, so they would be emphasizing, is that right? The old Jericho. So Jesus is leaving the old Jericho. So it says leaving Jericho. And just with that, leaving Jericho for Mark, this one is a bit of a crossover because Romans knew about the old Jericho, so they would understand that he's leaving the old Jericho as well. But they do focus on one person, Bartimaeus, because it's all about the story. It's not about the historical lore, if you like, with two witnesses. And then we have Luke, which is talking more about to the Gentiles, the people that aren't even in this area. They would only know about the new Jericho, or at least they wouldn't know that there was any difference. And so Jesus now is approaching Jericho because he's in the middle. When you're in the middle, are you leaving one Jericho and going to the other? Really, I think this is busted because at the end of the day, approaching Jericho, leaving Jericho, it really isn't a contradiction. It just depends on what that person is wanting to tell you about the story and what you understand of the story. It's like if you were telling me about your city, you would probably generalize and you'll probably talk to me about the tourist things. Whereas if you're in that area and you're talking to someone else in that area, you're probably talking about certain things that a tourist wouldn't even be able to understand. So why would you even go there? This is busted. Go do something awesome for God. Click on one of these, because I am going through a whole list, 439 of these contradictions, one a week. And it's going to take me 8.5 years, but it's going to be fun because we are learning so much. And I just want to thank you, DB. Thank you so much for giving me this question, because it is a great question. I'm sure it's in one of these 439. So we'll get to it. We'll bring it up again. But it might be 3 years from now. But yes, this is not a contradiction. This is more of a story, more of a rich story. And it just proves that the Gospels, the Bible, the New Testament, the Old Testament are all real world events. Go do something awesome for God, and click on that one and go do something awesome for God. Go on.